Hello everyone, welcome to Dhandeep Academy. So this is our daily answer writing program for geography optional. So we are doing this particular program for last few days and we have already covered good number of questions on population geography. So our coverage includes some PYQs and some recent trends which can be asked in upcoming papers. So let us see what questions do we have for today's discussion. So I have one question which is nothing but a blend of contemporary trend as well as what was asked in PYQ. So here question is asking about considering recent trends in Asia and Europe, analyze the factors driving the adoption of pro-natalist policies. How might these policies impact women's participation in the workforce? Now, if I try to understand question, this particular question is based on two concepts. One is pro-natalist population policy, fine, and whatever impact we have of these policies on women. And typically, so if we talk about the impact of any population policy on women, it can be about her health, rather than to be very specific, reproductive health we may talk about here, as well as it may also be considered in terms of economic impact. There will also be some social impact. So you will have to identify whatever policy which is being rolled by governments all across the world will have impact on women, typically in terms of her health or the economics or overall her position in society. So you have to think in these particular lines. So here we have to focus on the economic impact on women. Now when it comes to pro-natalist population policies, first understand what these pro-natalist population policies are. So these are the policies which are promoting birth, fine, so that the population size increases or the birth rate in any given population increases. Now, why we need pro-natalist population policy? So there are certain countries in Asia as well as in Europe and in North America which are facing problem of population decline or population stagnancy, which has resulted into lower economic growth altogether, right? So these are the issues which are being faced by many economies in Asia and in Europe, and then to increase population, they are introducing pro-natalist population policy. Now, how I can approach when it comes to the introduction of this particular question? So you can either mention some fact in this question, or you can define pro-natalist population policies, or as to why these pro-natalist population policies are required. That can also be one line of thinking you can take in here. Now let's go back to the answer. So in first part, in introduction, I have just said what these pro-natalist population policies are intending towards. So they are designed to encourage childbirth, increase fertility rate, so on and so forth. So this is one way you can introduce. Other way can be defining pro-natalist population policy, and third way to state why pro-natalist population policies are required. And even there is fourth way I can introduce with the help of a certain fact or certain example from recent times, which are suggesting that why we need pro-natalist population policy. So that is about introduction. Now in body part, first part I have to just identify factors which are driving the pro-natalist population policy or adoption of pro-natalist population policy. So there are many factors which are driving. There are some social factors, there are some economic factors, you can say. In social factors, there is problem of aging of population, dependency ratio is something which is increasing. And then when it comes to economic growth has suddenly started to stagnate or decline because there is no demand. So these are some drivers you have to mention for the adoption of pro-natalist population policy. Now when you write this particular part, what are the keywords which need to be mentioned here? Let us understand that. So when it comes to keywords, first and foremost, one keyword I need here is the aging of population. Okay, so this particular term needs to come there. And when we talk about aging of population, I then will talk about dependency ratio. So dependency ratio is another important keyword which needs to be highlighted in this particular part. So these are two important points you need to understand. Other than that, if I talk about some more reasons of pro-natalist population policy that could be regarding security, right? Because as the size of population goes on decreasing, there is imminent threat to security of any particular population group, because there are not enough people to defend that population group. And then again, this particular reason we will have to highlight. Okay, so these are some reasons which you need to mention in this particular part. Then we talk about the impact of these particular policies typically in terms of women's workforce or labor participation. So there are many ways this particular issue can be presented. So you can either take any case study, any example. That is one way with which you can go ahead. So take examples from, let us say, Germany or even say Japan. These particular countries are facing the problem of declining population maybe for last 10 years or so, and whatever pronatalist policies are there have been already implemented in these particular areas. And then you will have good number of case studies which are suggesting that the labor force participation of women is somewhere affected with the implementation of pronatalist population policy. The reasons are very obvious. Okay, so now I'm not going to tell you what exactly happens, because if a woman has to produce more number of children, her participation or her contribution in her career or in economy goes on decreasing, because for that particular period she is not doing any economic activity, and that certainly becomes a problem for her career growth as well as in terms of economy, we can say. So these are some issues which we need to highlight. Now you can take two courses, either directly mention ki so and so can happen as a result of the pronatalist population policy, but better way I would suggest here, you should try to introduce some case study or example from any of the given countries from Europe or Asia, which will highlight this particular problem even more, right? So that is about the second part, where I have to talk about the impact in economic terms, or to be very specific, in terms of labor force participation. So we anyway know, as the role of women towards giving birth increases, number of birth increases, she is more involved in that particular activity, and for those many years she is out of work, right? So that is the impact you have to mention in this particular part. Now everyone knows this particular impact, there is no problem with the impact. Now how to mention this particular part? Directly you can mention various impacts in this particular case. Other than that, you can also take some case study or example based approach. Fine. So I will get some example from Asia or Europe, and this particular case study is anyway going to highlight various impacts in terms of labor force participation or workforce participation. So that part will be taken care of with the case study or example itself. Now that is not a challenge. Everyone is going to reach up to this particular point. Now here one crucial step you need to follow is to write way forward, right? Most of you are likely to conclude here, or you might just abruptly end your answers. But what I am expecting is to provide a way forward which is balancing the pro-natalist population policy along with the economic needs of women, right? So you will have to provide first the challenges which are created by pro-natalist population policy, and then how these challenges can be overcome, because here you cannot argue कि we should not be going for pro-natalist population policies, right? So as these governments have already implemented or rolled this pro-natalist population policy, and if you take a very counter position that these pro-natalist population policies are very counterproductive for women in terms of her economic role, it is going to be sort of a negative tonality, because you are not showing any solution. So if I go for way forward, I'll say ki yes, pro-natalist population policy has some issues, right? And typically these are very gender biased in its impact, because pro-natalist population policies are not going to affect male counterpart as much as it is going to affect women counterpart. So I'll highlight these issues. I'll say they are definitely gender biased, but then there are solutions as well, right? So for whatever period a particular woman is out of workforce, she can be incentivized accordingly. That can be one solution. Other solution you need to execute here is regarding skill, because all these population policies when are implemented and women are out of work for a longer period, she is losing her skills, right? So you will have to reskill her. So pro-natalist population policy itself will have to have some arrangement for reskilling of women. Other than that, the responsibility of childbearing shall be shared by both women and male counterpart, and along with that, state should also take some steps for childbearing, because if women then needs to continue towards her work, someone needs to look after child, and then we have these facilities for like crèches and all these needs to be provided for in the policy itself. So you will have to argue from the line of policy rather than simply saying there is way forward. So I'll say whatever pro-natalist policies we have, what they should have ingrained into it. So all these solutions should be ingrained in those population policies. So that is where you are supposed to conclude, because everyone knows what are the reasons for pro-natalist population policy, everyone knows the impact, but the real marks which you are going to score is when you are writing these way forward wala points. So that was about this particular question. Now we'll see you in next part. Thank you again.